we all know OnlyFans, it blew up over the issues that was going on around the country. It's very it's very interesting because it's kind of like weaved into many facets and kind of supplanted itself as like a household name. But we typically talk about the people who are making the content, but it seemed like we want to talk about the people who are imbibing in the content, which is perfectly fine. I think it's worth talking about. It's possible that this could touch on like the broader concept of porn in our society in general and what role it has and what it can and what it can't do, what it should, what it shouldn't do. And there are many avenues that we could take there. Personally, we are going to be taking the position that OnlyFans consumers are not causing harm, and not only not causing harm, could actually be providing a valuable service and could be doing something either neutral or good for the people who are providing the content. When it comes to just porn generally, it's a pretty decent thing in society. It's been correlated with reducing violent crime, especially sexual crime. It's been correlated to helping marriages along and having stronger marriages. It can do many things, and it can be many things. People can people can use it unhealthily, as you can do literally anything. But that does not mean that simply because it exists, or simply because you can use it, or because you buy it, means that you're doing something wrong, or something wrong is happening. Also, I noticed, I'm going to just take this down. When you're here, it was given to me by a friend. It's typically obstructed by my chat, but it was given to me by a friend. So yeah, and I can throw it over to Maddie.
Great, thanks, Shark. And let me know if you can't hear me very well. I think my microphone is slowly dying. But OnlyFans customers do not create harm. And as Shark had mentioned, they in fact have a lot of positive impacts and lead to positive outcomes. One thing I want to point out as we're getting started here is that in order to claim that there's harm being done, you need to demonstrate that it is leading to a tangibly negative outcome, and that is in direct correlation to what you're proposing the cause is going to be. So I'm curious to hear what metric the opposition is using to define what is harmful that is absent of their own personal moral ideology. Because if we're talking about things like addiction, there's plenty of science and evidence that shows that porn does not lead to addiction. In fact, it is simply something that people with more like impulse control issues default to, or they may argue that it changes brain chemistry, which is also scientifically false. And that is backed up with neurological studies and by just about every single expert in the field of addiction and neurology. It does not, in fact, do that. So when we're talking about harm being done, what harm? In fact, I would say even compared to regular porn viewers, OnlyFans viewers do much more good because they're fairly compensating the sex workers that of the content they watch on the sex workers' terms. So when we're thinking about preventing exploitation, that would be a major benefit. So I'm excited for this conversation because there are so many great things about porn, and I can't wait to describe them and have a lively debate.
You got it. Thank you very much for that opening. And want to let you know, folks, before we kick it over to the yes side in particular, Andrew and Rachel will be arguing that, yes, OnlyFans consumers are causing harm. But first, want to let you know we are absolutely stoked. DebateCon is becoming bigger and bigger by the moment. Melody Mack, Go Boom, on YouTube has agreed to come to DebateCon. That's Saturday, September 19th in Plano, Texas. You don't want to miss it. For example, a debate that is occurring there. Destiny and Matt Dillahunty collide on the bodily autonomy argument, as you can see at the bottom right of your screen. It's going to be huge. Click on that link in the description box for tickets if you're in the Texas area. And with that, we're going to kick it over to Andrew and Rachel. Thanks so much for being with us. The floor is all yours for your opening as well.
You want me to go first? Or you want to go first?
Sure. Why don't you start?
Okay. Well, thanks for having us tonight, James. Appreciate it. I'd like to take a second to point out that I listened today while I was working to Shark, who was reviewing various debates I had that weren't specifically on this topic, but they were pretty close. And I kind of found it amusing. As is typical, of course, he points to empirical evidence like most leftists do for any society-wide prescriptions, and those who use any metrics or epistemology he dismisses as, quote, baby-brained. You see, from his viewpoint, conservatives are just plain stupid. I can't blame somebody suffering from left-wing indoctrination thinking these things, but you see, my problem with him is his justification process. You see, I like arguing with utilitarians a lot. They have a seemingly justified worldview, or at least some kind of epistemology and justification. Shark over here just wants us to grant that we should all start with empiricism and empirical data, and no justification is necessary, except that worldview, or of course, you're stupid. He also pointed out many times that intuitions aren't evidence of anything. That's just baby-brained after all. We need data. But you see, to paraphrase and poorly impersonate a friend of mine, Omni, who's probably going to end up winning philosophy awards in his lifetime, and I think is a skilled utilitarian debater, well, what is there really other than intuition? After all, in sociology, that's all we're measuring. Take a stoplight study. They might ask hundreds of people if they associate red with stopping more than green. More people may respond red, so they make public policy based on their intuitions, never actually stopping to ask them why they do, because in that case, they don't need to. In fact, sociology is mostly just studying the intuitions of people and publishing the findings of their responses. Very rarely are their motivations for why they think a thing even taken into consideration, only that they do. This is true enough, of course. Our harm reductionist friends over here can't tell us why they want harm reduced other than their intuition tells them it's optimal. Nothing more. Then they search out empirical data to figure out the things people report as being harmful to them and want to base all public policy on that, dismissing all other metrics outright as being baby-brained, or my favorite, feelings, when that's literally what their sociological studies are mostly gauging. What we want out of them tonight are justifications. We want them to justify why we ought to even use their empirical data, even if all the data points to just things you like. The ask is we just grant their worldview as being justified, which is totally absurd. Harm reduction is a subjective spectrum of nonsense, and it's not our primary edict. Now we will use their worldview as well to wreck them using their own empirical data standards. But just note that, like all Twitch people, they just assume we ought to grant their worldview to even have an argument, when really that's just us being totally benevolent and understanding that since everybody who is a Twitch poll scumbag argues inside the framework of harm reduction, that they just don't know any better. So this will be a data discussion, most likely with the false premise of we all want to reduce harm, some subjective category that they came up with. Likely the most amusing part of this statement is I doubt either party believes in objective truth, but we'll say we should go for empirical data to get as close to the objective truth as we can. Ignoring that irony, we will humor them with a single question, or a series of questions anyway. Why is OnlyFans good for society? Why are simps good for society? Why is any of this good for society? The answer will be, well, it has some good things about it and some bad things about it. So do the good things outweigh the bad things? Without ever justifying it all, why you should accept that even if the good metrics do outweigh the bad things, that you should accept that as being justified somehow. Even by that metric, though, the good things will not outweigh the bad things using their own data. And that's what I have.
All right, my turn. Okay, so Andrew's right. Whenever you're arguing with especially Twitch people or leftists in general, they want you to grant this materialist worldview where the only acceptable form of epistemology is going to be empiricism, right? But unfortunately for them, I'm really shocked because I heard that one of the people on the panel thinks I'm not a real researcher because I'm not doing these things in a university setting when I do research, even though that would eliminate like 95% of all books that have ever been written throughout history as being reliable research. If they took a look at the research, at the data, at the statistics that we do have, it's not on their side at all. I have tons. I mean, they give you some vague stuff like, well, I mean, but porn can be good. And like, generally we can correlate it with an overall reduction in some kind of sexual crime, which is absurd. That you're going to end up arguing the same thing that racists argue when they say, well, when we look at crime statistics, you know, we can prove that certain races are more violent or this or that. And it's like, yeah, but when you dig into the correlates, it's not really there. Like that direct correlation is not really there. It's the same thing with this. So we have data showing that this is harmful. And both of our opponents are on that socialist communist economic side of things. So it shocks me that they would support OnlyFans when only the top 1% of accounts make 33% of all the money on OnlyFans, and the top 10% of accounts make 73% of all the money. The average creator only brings home about $180 a month. It's really low. Most people cannot survive on it. They're supplementing income at best. The normal, like, universal law of distribution is like the 80-20 rule. OnlyFans is 80-14. It has less economic equality than South Africa, a former apartheid state. So to argue that harm is not being done to the creators, I think is going to be really tough just based on that. But we also have, I don't know where Maddie got her statistics from, but I have studies right here that show again and again that researchers find neuroplasticity in the brain is deeply affected by viewing pornography, that human sexuality is highly plastic and malleable, especially with kids seeing porn for the first time at an average age of 11 years old now. And then the other big dimension to this, how we can prove that the simps purchasing this content are creating harm, is a wonderful book called The Visibility Trap by Mary McGill. She's an Irish researcher, and she found that most of the creators on OnlyFans are experiencing leaks of their content in Discords, forums online. Many of them have been stalked or tracked in person because their data gets leaked. OnlyFans is not super secure and safe. This idea that it's safer than sex work on the street has not held up over time now that we've got more data on how the site works. There's been popular sex workers or OnlyFans girls on this channel who have quit because OnlyFans did not live up to the promise of safety, right, for them. So aside from that, we're also seeing marriage decline, birth rates decline, and we're seeing young men settle for parasocial relationships where they send a girl $6 a month to look at her butthole and say, that's, you know, it's easier than dating. I'm just going to settle for this. So I'm interested to hear what they have as their justification or their proof, because Andrew's going to kind of take the philosophical wing, the logistics, the logics of this debate, and I'm going to present some of the empirical evidence because that's what they want. So if you look at the actual empirical evidence, it's very hard for me to find any way that you could argue their point, but we'll see.
So just really quickly, I want to say what I'm hearing from Rachel is that OnlyFans is bad because only the top 1% or like whatever percent make money from it. And I'm so thrilled to hear her say that, because hearing you advocate for the redistribution of wealth in a capitalist system and how capitalism and OnlyFans being like a microcosm of that is only leading to the top people making money. We stand a base queen. So thank you for that.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a problem. It's a critique of your worldview, though. Why don't you understand?
And I'm also,
that?
it's also
That's
curious too.
That's a critique of your worldview.
You're
It's
defending
showing
it as
how can you
harmful.
defend it as
I'm
harmful.
also
it's
concerned.
No, wait.
One thing,
I have to
because that's a
correct you.
data point. Because that's a data point too.
I have to
and it's
correct
interesting
you though, because you misinterpreted the data point. You said that you misinterpreted the data. It is not representative.
I thought you don't care about data.
You care about data. So
But I don't think,
here
but
am
why
with
does
data.
it, but you're
All right.
saying that data doesn't
Have to do
matter.
this, but have to mute everybody just to restore order so this doesn't go off the tracks right away. So just a moment. Want to give you a chance to respond, Maddie. So I want to give Maddie plenty of time because that was a good chonky statement from you, Andrew and Rachel. And then I promise we'll come right back to you, Rachel. Thank you very much. Oh, you're
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah, no, I got you. Yeah, so I mean that was just an interesting tidbit. Also, it's interesting that you're using data as the crux of your argument because, quote, we believe in data. But if you didn't believe in data or believe that it had any value in terms of putting a point forward, then you're kind of just arguing against yourself because you're having to use our assumption and foundation as the jumping ground for your entire point of view. And that just feels a little weird, a little bizarre. And I guess I'll toss it over because I know Shark also has lots of things he wants to say, but it's just interesting when you talk down data and how data doesn't matter. But intuition, on the other hand, aka feels, is the real indicator of truth. But it's only your feels, right? It's not other people's feels. So what a fascinating turn of events for the conservative wing of Twitch. Feelings over facts. You gotta love them for being upfront about it and going mask off.
Let me be sure. Shark, I think you were handing it over to Shark, but at the same time, I wasn't sure because Rachel, if you want to respond, we'll give you a chance. Go ahead.
Yeah. So first of all, this is why it's so hard to debate women because you get a lot of, oh, I guess, oh, wow, interesting. It's like, can you just be a little bit more adult about it and present your points without all the snarky snipiness? It's like, just stop with that crap. But Maddie completely misinterpreted everything we said. We did not say that empiricism did not matter or that data did not matter. We said it's not the only thing that matters. Empiricism is not the only way to determine truth.
She also
There are
needs to
other
learn
ways.
what an internal critique is.
But
Right?
that's, yeah. But what I'm saying is we can present different proofs. So Andrew can perform a philosophical argument. I can give you empirical data that refutes yours. We can do both. And it's not a microcosm of capitalism. I just got done telling you that it's actually far more exploitative than capitalist systems, even the worst ones we have. OnlyFans is far more exploitative than the average capitalist system. So nice try, but next time listen and try to understand what you're hearing.
Sure. Oh, can I go?
Yep.
Sure. Okay. So a couple of things. For one, when it comes to OnlyFans, it's for one, you can't just take the full metric of OnlyFans and how many and what percentage of the top 1% are the ones getting all of the money, because it's not very relevant, because a lot of OnlyFans is not porn at all. A lot of the original marketing of OnlyFans is for just celebrities, and there are a bunch of celebrities on there that paid basically as just like a mini Twitter.
Why would that matter? Who cares what the industry is?
Because we're saying OnlyFans customers, that includes non-porn customers.
From your perspective, any industry where the top 1% of the earners should be problematic.
No, that's my perspective, not his.
I didn't say that. I never said that. I think all systems are always going to be unequal to some degree. That's just kind of like how the world works. So we can try to mitigate it as much as we can, but it's always going to be unequal. That's just kind of how it works. Some people are just going to simply be more popular than others. That's just, it just happens. That's okay. It's fine. But when it comes to that, I'm sorry, like Bella Thorne or and I don't know very many rich people. John Cena is probably going to get more OnlyFans subscribers than like Sarah, who works at Target. Okay, that's fine. Also, I don't know what's wrong with supplementing your income simply. Like, I think supplementing your income is actually pretty great. You being able to pick up more hobbies, you being able to possibly even quit a job and have a little bit of money built up to go do something else. In the quit, have like a little, that like 3-6 month window where you have income built up and go do something else is actually pretty cool. I think that's a great thing for people to be able to do. And they don't even have to post like hardcore porn to be able to get there. I don't think there's anything really wrong with that. I do think that there needs to be more parity. And I do think that OnlyFans does need to do more work. Also, you mentioned things like safety in OnlyFans. The customers don't control OnlyFans TOS. Like on Twitch, like I could imagine like if let's just even talk about like Twitter. Like is like using Twitter something bad now because like Elon Musk can have complete access to everybody's DMs and basically do whatever he wants now. Elon Musk literally via TOS, he literally owns everybody's DMs. You better
You're arguing a straw man. I didn't say that.
Well, go ahead and explain.
One second. I just want to
what
jump
I
in.
said was
Rachel, I hate doing this to you again. I just want to redirect, so it'll give you a chance to say exactly what you're going to say, Rachel. But then I do want to be sure that we return to the consumers of OnlyFans, 'cause rather than talking too much about so many of the girls or guys, whoever's on OnlyFans, that only make like $8 a month or whatever. But so just to bring it back right after your comment, Rachel.
Right. So the reason I brought up that data was to show that for people who want equality and equity in the world, for them to be sitting here defending a highly unequal and unequitable platform where people's personal data is I wasn't talking about TOS. I was talking about the fact that the simps or the users of the platform provide this huge market of demand that most people don't really profit much from, but at the same time, it's presented as safer than traditional sex work, which has not necessarily proven to be true. And there have been massive data leaks. People can take screenshots, people can screen record your content, post it anywhere. You never get that back. You can't put the shit back in the horse. So it's a highly exploitative system. It's marketed to the youngest, most vulnerable, most desperate girls as something that's safe when it's not. So for people who build their entire online persona around wanting equity and safety and, a good life for everyone, for them to defend this is indefensible.
Before we go any further on, in particular, the models of OnlyFans, one person actually did ask a question in the live chat that is pertinent. Deej says, can we agree on what the definition of harm is by these consumers? So in what way are they harming, whether it be the models or themselves or somebody else?
We can't agree to a definition of harm. For them, likely the definition of harm is something like suffering.
So you're saying but how do you measure that then? What's your metric
and how do you
draw the direct line?
I want to know what you value. You both like consider yourselves Christians. I want to know what you like value in this situation. Or a Catholic? Is that correct? Orthodox. So yeah, like in this situation, what do you value? What do you call harm? I guess from a secular perspective, because I don't feel like any of us need to be.
It's very simple. Anything that steps outside of Christian ethics, which is a mix of deontological and virtue ethics. So everything that's outside
the Bible mentions.
Okay, so one more time before you cut in, Maddie, since you asked me a direct question, I'd like to answer it. What was asked is, how do we decide what's harmful, or in other words, what's bad? We know what's bad because if it steps outside of our ethical system, it's bad. If it's within the framework of that ethical system, it's good. Same as yours, right? You focus on some type of utilitarian purview, I'm guessing. So anything that increases harm is bad, and anything that decreases harm is good.
Okay, that's good. Is there literally harm? Wait, Maddie.
Sorry,
I already defined
it.
I already told you what we consider harm to be.
Okay, is there literally anything else to it?
No, there's nothing else to it for your system either.
Oh, I'm just asking. When
I'm just telling you.
Okay, when I think about harm, I'm talking about, yeah, you're right, like suffering,
yes,
somebody getting hurt,
I know.
something bad happening to them.
I'm aware.
Okay, I just want to know if there's any way I could possibly reach you in any way, shape, or form. In this discussion.
Well, this is the problem. Well, this is the problem. When we have a discussion like this, we have to grant your worldview in order to have the argument, because you don't.
Are you gonna do that then?
Because you don't understand.
Is that what you're doing?
One more time, let me finish. You don't actually understand our worldview, right? You have no conceptualization of the ontological ethics or virtue ethics, but we understand utilitarianism inside now.
But you understand.
So we have to grant your worldview. We have no choice because you can't understand anything outside of that.
Oh, got it.
Well, I mean, thanks for letting me in. Anyways,
okay,
Maddie,
hang on. Since Maddie's being snarky,
is harm when not Christian?
Hey, Maddie,
Snark is her personality.
Yeah, hey, Maddie,
That's
can you tell
true.
me since you guys just don't. We're not smart enough to understand your worldview. Maddie, what is our worldview?
I've literally never said that. First of all,
what's our worldview, Maddie?
I've never even commented on your intelligence, which is
what's
so
our
weird.
worldview?
I've never claimed to understand your worldview.
Right. So then I was right.
But I'm also not so. But I'm also not
just
so.
Sit there,
I'm also not so up my own asshole that I proclaim to know anyone else's worldview.
Well, that's because you're not smart enough to be.
No,
smart.
it's because I'm not up my own.
You're not
asshole.
smart enough to be smart.
It's because I'm not up my own asshole.
No, you're just not smart
Maddie,
enough.
do you think we haven't debated utilitarian ethics like 50,000 times by now? This is what we do.
You're
we
assuming
know
I'm
that
utilitarian.
Sure, that's good, but with all of this, I actually don't care. So you all said that you all said that you all had information to prove that it is harmful in our worldview. In the real world, it causes real world harm to human beings.
No, our worldview is the real world as well.
Okay, sure. My bad. That was wrong turn of phrase. I'll take it back. In our way that we view the world, you said that you have information to prove or to show or to correlate that there is harm that we would recognize as harm. Can you tell me what that is? And we can talk about it one by one.
You mean you want us to go through a listing of everything that we think you would consider to be harm and then weigh it, and then we're going to weigh that against the good points, just like I said you wanted to do?
Well,
right?
Okay. I mean, listen. I just want to talk about if it's like true or not that harm does exist, or that conceptualization of harm does exist, right? Because if I think like stepping on my dog's tail is harm, and you think like not taking your dog to the park is harm, right? Like something along those lines. Then you run
into a lot of epistemology issues with that, right? So this is the whole problem with this, but. Don't worry, we will go into your studies and your metadata, and we'll go through this to make you happy, right? I'm just saying that you have no moral grounding, no moral foundation. You have absolutely nothing from which to even bring an argument, right? You don't even understand the conceptualization where we come from or what we mean when we say virtues and what we mean when we say that we follow a completely different ethical system than yours, which is just as valid. But you only want to use these metrics because you live inside of an echo chamber where that's what everybody does.
Okay, bud. I mean, you don't know my life at all, but thank you for trying to.
I'm talking about Twitch politics.
Listen, buddy. If I need somebody to help write my biography,
look here, buddy.
Hush, Rachel.
I have to hire you. Listen, Rachel. I mean, I don't like to use a lot of words lab coats came up with to try to figure out how the world works. When you, I guess, got mad at what I was talking about and when I guess I called you baby brain, what I was talking about is not simply using intuition as a part of how you figure out something. We all use we all start from somewhere. We all feel something, and then we figure out. And then I would imagine that after that, we would like to figure out what's actually true or not by like trying to test it out in the real world. Does our intuition?
But do most of the sociological studies in which you want to go over today are they measurements of intuition?
How do you define intuition? Like, are you just defining it as feelings?
So if somebody asks you,
could extend that to definitions pretty
Maddie,
broadly.
I'll help Maddie. So Maddie, if somebody says, do you think that this is good or bad? And they ask you for no justification and you say it's bad, that's your intuition.
But how, so anytime you make any sort of judgment call on whether something is good or bad, all of that is intuition.
Yes.
If that changes based on the data. So that's interesting because a lot of times we define or like we make those decisions based on other inputs, right? Because are you only making those decisions based on? Yes, you do.
In fact,
yes, you do.
Most of the time in sociology,
like how we know that lead paint is bad?
What?
Because we had data to suggest that it was causing harm.
And so when you asked a person,
that it wasn't intuition.
So when you asked, so Maddie, I'm going to try to help you out here. So if you ask a person,
oh my God, thank you so much,
who ate lead paint, point to the spot where it hurts. They go, oh, it hurts right here. They don't ask them if they have a foundation for why it hurts. They don't ask them why they have the belief that it hurts. They just point and say, oh, it hurts. And so
is that how you think they discovered?
So the little guy on his little clipboard says. He says a thing hurts. And this is how they do that type of data collection. Same thing with most sociological studies.
That's how you think they discovered that lead was poisonous?
No, don't be ridiculous. What I'm trying to point out to you is that most sociological studies are measuring people's intuitions. They're not asking for their motivations, rather seeing how they react, not the motivations behind why they stop necessarily at the red light. It's more important to them to know that they do. Most people don't give.
They absolutely ask for
most people don't give
I've led those
justifications.
studies.
Most people. Okay, well, here, Maddie, let me give you a great example of this. Can you justify for me why you go to work?
Why I go to work?
Yeah.
So you want me to give you the rationale? I mean, there's a number of
not the
reasons.
rationale. What's
Yo,
the
can
justification?
we please stop this?
Like, this seems
I'm
dumb.
begging.
Yeah, like this is really like this has nothing
I'm
to do with
begging.
OnlyFans customers.
Right. So again, grant our worldview. And then if we decide to go into why we think your worldview is wrong, the first thing you do is pivot and go, we don't want to talk about that. Please talk about empirics. Please talk about empirics. For the love of God, talk about empirics. It's all we know. But you won't actually get into your own worldviews.
No, so here's the thing. Like you got on me for being like, oh, thinking bad and like the whole baby brain thing. All I was saying is that just like using simply intuition when you come to conclusions in the world can sometimes lead you to pretty bad decisions.
Well, if I
I
think I can help sort this out a little bit and move it along.
Sure.
So,
I guess I really wanted to talk about what you brought up when it came to like the hierarchy in because I don't think we finished that. I think we got derailed.
Right. So,
But
what Andrew is saying is that you guys want a granted worldview where everything is figured out empirically, whereas we would say that doesn't tell you can't get an ought from an is. I'm sure you guys have heard that, right? You've heard the phrase you can't get an ought from an is.
The is ought gap.
So we could present a bunch of data and we could say, well, how does this data tell us what we ought do? And you guys would say harm. And we would say the logical extension of that argument is, why not put everybody in a vat, hook them up to pleasure sensors, give them opiates, give them, scientifically using whatever technology we have, just put everybody in a vat and give them permanent pleasure, right? Just nothing has meaning, nothing has value, there's no virtues, there's no morals. We just feel pleasure and there's no harm, right? Why not do that under your worldview? Therefore, we dismiss this type of worldview because it doesn't take into account why we ought to do anything. And this is essentially a moral claim we're making, whether this is a good or bad, harmful or not, right? So we can go over the empirics, but what Andy is saying is, even granted that, it doesn't tell us what we ought do in the world. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yep, that's perfectly fine. This okay. Let's just go back to what we were talking about.
Sound very flustered. Calm down.
Well, I was thinking about responding to the whole why don't we put people in a vat thing, but I didn't want to get derailed again. So I just wanted to that I was thinking. My brain runs faster than my mouth. It's a part of the ADHD. But the whole like hierarchy thing. I mean, there's
what
always
hierarchy thing? I'm not sure what you're referring to.
Oh, when you were talking about like how only some people actually make a living wage. But that's like also leaving out how many people are actually trying to make a living wage, or how many people actually need to make a living wage off of OnlyFans, right? Did you ever
but
that?
Couldn't we apply that to the entire economy as a whole, and then all the socialist and communist economics gets thrown out the window? I mean, can't we just say that about, well, maybe the person's only making minimum wage at McDonald's because they're not really trying, and maybe they don't need to make a good living. I mean, can't we apply that to your whole worldview and then just wipe it out?
It's fascinating. Sorry. It's just fascinating that like the conversation tends to steer towards trying to discredit like a worldview or that, but they are avoiding talking about OnlyFans customers as a whole. You seem to be circumventing what this actual debate's supposed to be about, because I don't think you have a real foundation of an argument. Yeah, you're right. I have no idea what a debate is. I have no idea what I'm doing here. Who am I?
I'm supposed to question your grounding. Am I supposed to question your grounding?
But it's interesting that you do that while completely skirting the points that we're making about the value of being an OnlyFans.
We're not skirting them, but
it's just very interesting.
Maddie, hang on. What's the debate topic, Maddie?
What's the debate topic? Are you like, okay, first of all, don't fucking condescending me. Second of all, like, make an argument and then rebut
help myself. What's the debate?
You can't help yourself.
I can't.
Are you
What's the debate
saying you have a
topic?
compulsion disorder?
I do.
All
I have
right,
to
let's
Can
get
you
back to
just
this.
tell him
I
not
have-
to be condescending? That's funny.
I have to treat thoughts a certain way. So again, if you'd help me out here, Maddie, can you tell me what's the debate topic?
The debate topic is, do OnlyFans customers create harm?
Right. And so what's harm?
What's harm?
Yeah.
Well, that's sort of what we were discussing earlier. We were
So tell
trying
me
to
what
come
it
to a
is.
foundation.
Right.
What do you by any? No, I'm saying, okay, well, there's many types of harm. I'm sorry. Harm is when not Christian, apparently. Is that correct?
Well, wait. Well, I mean, yes.
that correct?
But that aside, while that may be a
So harm is
facet of
not
what we believe,
Christian.
let me.
I'm
let me
guessing
just
you've
ask
never
you again.
thrown a pigskin football around, right?
Let me just ask you again.
Christianity doesn't love
just real
that.
quick, because this is really important. If we don't agree with your definition of harm, which you haven't given yet, how can we even proceed into having a debate, Maddie?
Well, it's interesting because I'm the one arguing that it's not causing harm. So you're kind of asking me to prove a negative. Whereas with
you can't give me a definition of harm?
if you are saying that it is harmful, then
Maddie,
the onus
you
is
asked
on
for a
you to
definition
define
of
what
harm.
harm is. And we told you, you're asking me what the definition of harm
Yes.
is. Okay, there
Yeah.
needs to be, there's a number of metrics. That there's harm based on, let's say, psychological, right? Where we're talking about like, okay, it's if you're making the argument that it's leading to addiction issues, and that specifically because they are subscribed to OnlyFans, and that is what is driving the addiction, whatever, then
These
that
are
would be a
definitions?
metric. That would be a metric with which you could measure harm.
Yeah, well, what's the definition of harm, though, so that we know what we're measuring?
Do you want me to link you the dictionary? Do you not have Google?
I just
in your
want you to
town?
tell me so that we know what we're operating.
Your
with.
Again,
ignorance
Maddie,
knows
you
no
asked
bounds.
for a definition of harm. At the beginning, you said, can we please define what harm is? You
Right.
asked for the definition of harm, and now you're like,
And
you want me to provide a
since I've
definition?
learned,
You want me to
I've
provide
learned
it
that
for you?
harm means when not Jesus. Harm means when not Jesus. And thank you.
Okay, well, we
I can
work-
tell you must have gotten that definition from your very extensive research.
Well, wait. If
So
thank
now
you.
you don't want to define harm.
no, it's fine. If she
You don't want-
defines harm as not being Jesus, then we have won the debate.
Yeah, because Jesus
That's
loves
true.
you guys.
What do
Okay,
you got,
so with all this, I think I think we can come to like I think we can come at it like this. Like generally, I think your average person would understand harm to be something along the lines of damage, injury to not being able to do something that you wanted to, or something out of your control that impedes something that you were looking to do. Typically, is how people would consider that to be harm. Pain, suffering could also be under that definition. So obviously, you could harm somebody by making them feel distress, emotional distress. You could harm somebody by shooting them. You could harm people in many different ways.
Good.
So this would be
I'm
like
glad
typical
that
harm.
you finally defined harm, because now, based on what you just said, I want to
You do
ask:
seem glad.
Are you in favor of a lot of the measures that were taken during the global events of the last couple of years, which a lot of people thought were causing them suffering, distress, preventing them from doing things they wanted to do, like leave the house, go to work, run their
I would say the
business,
people that died from
practice
COVID probably
bodily
felt more
autonomy and
distressed.
choose what things go into their body and what things don't. So if you define harm that way, then are you like a pure anarchist or a libertarian, like a really strong libertarian, because you don't want these restrictions?
I would say the people that died from COVID probably would feel differently about if we totaled up
Well, how do you know
the
they're
harm
dead?
done. That's
Oh,
a very
wait,
good argument,
that's-
Andrew. Thank you.
No,
for pointing
and we
that
can
out.
then say, okay, so you are saying that sometimes it's worth it to restrict certain behaviors and make policy decisions that restrict certain behaviors if we can prove that they are harmful under what Chris just said.
Is your correlation a deadly virus to OnlyFans?
No, I'm saying, are you in favor of preventing people from doing certain things and taking away certain liberties, enforcing certain behaviors and restricting others under the guise of preventing harm?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
When the
Got
harm
it.
is tangible and like definable, and in the case of a global pandemic, a once in a lifetime pandemic, yeah, I would say that succinctly falls under that category.
Right. So all of the stuff I listed in the beginning, not sure if Maddie heard what I said, but I think Chris heard what I said, where we're talking about how, women are joining OnlyFans at a very young age. A lot of them the people who do the sex work, they're very young. The median age, I think, was like 21.2 years old. It's really young.
Oh,
and the average consumer of that content is like 35. So we have this market of older men and this creators being these really young, vulnerable girls who haven't built life skills, who haven't built any sort of safety nets for themselves. They may not have gotten married. They don't have an education or a career. They're doing this not because it's been their dream to make $180 online every month, showing everyone their bits and pieces, but usually because they need the money, right? So would we say that this is exploitative of those people? Because normally I feel like you guys would want to protect those people, wouldn't you?
No one's forcing them to go to OnlyFans, just like no one's forcing someone to drive for Uber, just like no one's forcing someone to take any job. So I would say if they're of consenting age and they're making that informed decision for themselves to do whatever they want to do on OnlyFans, no, I don't have a problem with that.
Would you say the same thing about heroin?
Just before we go further with this, I do want to redirect us, just because we've talked so much about the content creators of OnlyFans, in terms of the potential harm caused by the consumers.
We're there right now.
That's what I'm talking about.
So when we're talking about the addiction aspect for the consumer, would you say the same exact thing for heroin?
For what? Can you restate? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, what do you mean?
If they're informed adults,
right?
They
if they're
can do
informed
heroin.
adults and they've consented to do heroin, it's cool, right?
Oh, what do you mean by cool? Do you mean like I should
Should
throw
be
them in jail?
legally
You're
permitted.
fine with it.
Yeah, I think it should be legally permitted. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you should like throw somebody in jail for using heroin. No.
So
And
what
we
if
should
don't
have
wanna
a market for
criminalize
it.
addiction.
We should have a
I don't
market
think
for
there's-
that, just like OnlyFans.
Have a market for heroin?
Yeah.
I think it's when it comes to heroin, I feel like it's so fundamentally different. In other like substances that people take, they're fundamentally different than a lot of other things, like even possibly gambling, porn as well. That they should be legal, but I think they should be restricted. And I think they should come with clear markets from people who are the companies who are the ones like providing the platform for that to tell people what they're getting into, and they should be held legally responsible for that.
Okay, so just to back this up, I want to make sure I get this right.
Sure.
Heroin, you think that heroin use, there should be a market for it. Is that correct?
No.
No. You didn't say,
No.
You didn't just say that there should be.
No.
No,
There should not be a
saying that you're
market
not
for
going
heroin.
to.
But if we're speaking about the customers or the people who have heroin or heroin doers, they should not be held like they should not be.
Criminally.
The state should not like come in and like. fuck
So
their
if
shit
there
up.
was no OnlyFans, there would be no simps to get addicted to pornography on OnlyFans, right, Chris?
No, he's saying that you don't need to criminalize.
Yeah,
Like,
I know
when
what
you're
he said. I
Criminalizing
just heard it.
something.
Okay, no,
you-
that here. Sure. If there was no OnlyFans, there wouldn't be anybody on OnlyFans. That's true.
Right. So you wouldn't create a market for heroin because of that
Mhm.
addiction. Why would you
Yep.
create a market for people to become addicted to OnlyFans?
Well, it's not. Well, for one, it's not as addictive or anywhere near addictive. And honestly, the jury is out if it's
Oh,
addictive
wait.
at all.
How do you
It's
know?
true though. Should we not have a market for sugar?
Yeah. So how do you know? How do you know?
Or
it's
like,
not
should
as
we not have a
How do you,
market
well, wait.
for
How do you
alcohol?
know if it's not as addictive, Chris?
Let's ban
How do I
all
know it's not
alcohol.
addictive? It's common sense.
Oh, it's common sense. that
It's
not
common
addictive.
sense.
It's his
It's
intuition.
common sense. Anybody
It's
knows this.
it's his intuition. So
Mhm.
I
Yep.
did notice when I had watched your kind of revamp of me earlier that you were going to use the argument of intuition, but you have to use intuition with foundation. You don't understand what intuition is.
Sure.
So what's the foundation for your intuition, or do you have one? Just say no.
My
Just say
foundation-
no.
I was
my
raised
founda-
Catholic, so
My foundation for this intuition is specifically that porn and viewing something is fundamentally different when we're talking about grown adults than taking a substance. It does different things to your brain because you're not putting something literally in your body.
But it is addictive.
Unfortunately for you, I have to refute that because you are incorrect according to the science that you guys want to follow. There's a wonderful website called yourbrainonporn.com, which has a ton of citations of studies.
That sounds
books.
Unbiased.
No, it may be, but they're peer-reviewed studies.
Do you have any
they're
evidence
well-cited books. Wait, these are peer-reviewed studies. Data. These are well-cited books. Okay.
Do I?
So, you guys want to hear this or no? Or are we just gonna? Okay. So
he does.
This is a book that was written by an expert on neurology and neuroplasticity. His name is Norman Doidge. You guys might even have heard of him. I've heard of him before. He has a book called The Brain That Changes Itself. And he did a ton of research and looking at the metadata for pornography. And he said, the content of pornography is a dynamic phenomenon that perfectly illustrates the progress of an acquired taste. 30 years ago, hardcore pornography usually meant the explicit depiction of intercourse between two partners and, looking at genitals and whatnot, right? And then softcore stuff was softcore stuff. But now you can get this everywhere with high-speed internet. There's sites all over the internet that don't check your age. You don't have to in any way prove that you're an adult who knows what you're consuming. But even among adults who consume it, they know that the brain is highly neuroplastic when it comes to sexuality. And in my book, I did some research on a guy who, this was a horrible person, an MK Ultra doctor who put electrodes in people's brains and tried to convert them from being gay. And unfortunately, he was successful. So he would provide heterosexual stimulus and then zap certain parts of the brain, completely rewired what these people's tastes were. But you don't have to implant electrodes. We can see the effects now with people who have porn addictions. They start with a little bit of viewership with something pretty normal. Over time, that stimulus doesn't do the same thing. So they get on to worse things, crazier things, different fetishes and things like that. And before you know it, they're incapable of having a normal sexual experience with another person without this stimulus. And 10% of all adults in the United States say that they have had a porn addiction that has significantly affected their life. So we do know that this is a problem people struggle with and that it does affect them. And we have studies and we have books and we have empirical evidence from 10% of the population who says this crippled them. So what do you guys say to that?
Sure. Here's the amazing thing, right? Because simply because you say something happened does not mean it actually did. So when researchers have actually looked into porn and
brilliant refutation.
Let him finish.
Let him finish.
Because that was literally all that I was saying. You got me. And would you like to respond to that? Okay, very cool.
Respond to what? You haven't said anything.
Yeah, that's why I was surprised you started speaking.
Well, you made a declarative statement that was obviously incorrect.
We were fascinated that you started speaking.
It's just.
Well, no, I want to hear him refute. I want to hear his evidence. I want to hear him refute my evidence.
Go ahead, Chart.
Sure. When researchers have looked into porn and what they seem to and what they would like to see is what they would look into, which would be like porn addiction. They found out a bunch of really interesting things. One thing was that they were not able to find that people's brains and people who specifically called themselves problematic porn users to react differently to erotic stimuli compared to the general population and people who typically just watch porn even semi-frequently. They weren't able to find that. They weren't able to find things that like markers that would say that this person is actually addicted. They weren't able to find any causative links between the porn that they were watching or any porn that they would be consuming whatsoever in grown adults to changes in their brain structure or brain responses to erotic stimuli at all. What they were able to find is that people who tend to have compulsive habitual disorders can gravitate to many different things. It seems like there's no real difference between somebody who seems to, who sees that has a problem like getting to work or it's impairing their life or they claim that they have like a porn actually like harmed them in some way. It seems like this person could have easily gotten onto like they could have easily gotten onto another vice, and that compulsivity of them makes them no different than like somebody who walks into a room and has to flip the light switch on and off 3 times or something along those lines. It's not the porn that actually did this to them.
What? So wait, so you're saying that
Go
if
ahead.
the porn wasn't there, they would have just been addicted to something else?
Yes, and something that would be worse.
Okay, and what do you think would be worse, the flicking the light switch on 3 times, or the fact that your brain has been slowly hardwired to watch progressively more and more hardcore pornography?
That's just not true.
Okay,
Yeah, no,
well,
but I mean, it
I'm
is
looking
true.
at another
It's
study
just not.
right here that directly
It's not
contradicts
true.
everything you just said. It says that the people who organized this 2018 study found that porn scenes, like addictive substances, are hyperstimulating triggers that lead to unnaturally high levels of dopamine secretion. This can damage the dopamine reward system and leave it unresponsive to natural sources of pleasure. This is why users begin experiencing difficulty in achieving arousal with a physical partner. And then it goes on to show other measurements that they found in the brain with scans and other behavioral issues that they found in the people they studied. So I guess I can tell you the name, I could drop my links in the chat and we could go over them, but it seems like I'm finding stuff that directly contradicts what you're saying.